Hello, everybody. My name is Coach Ray Z, and welcome to episode 10 of Athletic Definition Podcast. Today, my guest is Alex Flamenco. Alex, I know this is your first time on Fireside. Welcome. And all you have to do is hit the little monkey to unmute.
There you go. You able to hear me?
Perfect. How you doing today, Alex?
I'm well, and you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining me. Uh, I've known Alex for quite some time now through the running community, and Alex has a very remarkable and interesting life story. And I was kind of reading a little bit of what you gave me earlier, Alex. So I think it'd be, for everyone listening in, the best thing to do is start from the beginning. You know, you, were you born in this country, or did you come over here as a child?
I was born in El Salvador. I came here when I was 4 years old.
And was that because your family wanted to, pursue the American dream, or?
No, actually, I'm not sure. Actually, that's something that I have to figure out more about. But I know that I was sent here at 4 years old. My my the way I've always seen it is that the woman that gave birth to me, I don't call her my mother. I don't use that word. But anyways, the woman who gave birth to me, she just wanted to get rid of me. And the reason I believe that is because she had a bunch of kids. They didn't take care of any. So I've always seen it as she was just trying to get rid of me. So she sent me to well, his name is Alfredo. He was the person that was supposed to be my father. Again, I wouldn't call him my father because he never was. But the point is that I was supposed to come live with him here because sometime during her pregnancy, he moved to the United States. So they sent me over here. At the time, I just remember that I didn't want to come. I was a child and I was leaving everything that I knew. So it was terrifying to me, but I had no choice in the matter. They just sent me. Um, One of the recollections I have is that I was dropped off at a bus station and handed over to this woman. Uh, this woman, I guess, was supposed to be in charge. To me at the time, it seemed like it was just some random person. But this woman made my life miserable on the trip. She was just beating me the whole way. She refused to let me sleep and just tortured me the entire trip. And that was on top of an already torturous journey, which is coming from El Salvador, illegally. It is hell. I remember going through the desert, dying of thirst and not eating. It was just complete hell. There was one incident I remember where, again, I was very young, but I got the impression that somebody was looking to kill the whole group of immigrants, and we were hiding. And I remember seeing men through a little hole in a wall or something, and they were armed, just walking around searching for the group, and we were hiding. I think this happened in Guatemala, actually, for some reason. But that's what I remember about that. And I'm looking to find out more about what actually happened, why I was sent here. I'd like to get other people's side of the story.
Wow.
I know that was a lot.
Right. I've seen a movie which never does anything justice, but it kind of gave me a little bit of an idea of what, um, you know, this movie was in particular people from El Salvador. So, I think a lot of us just kind of think of Mexico and that desert journey, but coming further, because you have to cross, I believe, some sort of a river. And then after that, you get to Guatemala. And then from there, you still have to get to Mexico. And then from there, you still have to get to the US. And each country has its own dangers. And I couldn't even imagine that as a child. And then when you get here, you're still really not quite sure of, you know, what, well, who you're staying with. And it seems like who decided to or helped out wasn't very nice to you at all. They seem abusive. And so what was your next step?
Yeah, well, again, I was supposed to come live with Alfredo, but I don't know what happened. I ended up living with my grandma. But problem is that my grandma did. She hated me. She made that very clear from day one. And for the next 7 years, she just made my life miserable. Beatings, uh, verbally abusive, just tormenting me every day until I was 12, at which point I ran away from home. I never went back home. I was alone since then. Well, I'm not alone anymore, but point is that from that point on, I never went back.
And did you have a chance to go to school? While this was going on, or no opportunity for that?
Well, I went to school, the whole time that I was living with my grandma. And I had a lot of problems because, I had a lot of issues at home. So school was difficult. And then when I ran away from home, I stopped going to school because I knew they could find me there. So I missed the first semester of seventh grade. And then I always tell this story about, I don't remember where I was, but there was an incident that made me feel stupid. And I was probably like 12 years old. And it was at that point that I decided that I would never feel that way again. So I went back and checked myself into school. And I remember going to the school and I told them that I was there to check myself in. They told me I had to bring in my parents. I told them I didn't have any. So they sent me to the principal. He again told me that I had to bring my parents. I again said I don't have any. Well, I just remember his eyes were got wide and he couldn't believe it. But anyways, he somehow I was able to get into school and I continued to go to school while I was living on the street. For me, it was I actually wanted to learn. I've always liked learning, and it was a place where I can eat and have a little bit of normalcy. So I did go to school while I was on the street.
Well, that that's good, and unfortunately, sometimes things that happen to us cause us to want to do better. So that's good that in some ways that made you want to enroll yourself in school. And I know it had to have been tough being homeless and going to school, but I kind of just I'm wondering like, at what point did a little bit of working out inspire you? Or was it sports in school? When did you kind of first get a little glimpse of that?
Well, I always loved sports. Ever since I can remember, I can't ever remember not liking sports. I always played basketball or some sport and loved football. My dream was always playing football. So I always played sports. And then around 12 years old, actually, maybe about 13, I started working out, like just doing push ups and doing whatever. I was doing things incorrectly at the time, but I remember I wanted to get bigger because, again, my dream was to play football. And I was so tiny. I was always very, very small.
And did you want to play American football or
Yes,
soccer?
American football.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sports is the one thing that I think has helped a lot of people. And me personally, when I went to school, I remember being discriminated against. Some kids didn't want to play with me because I spoke Spanish. So I'm glad at least, I don't know if it was in school that you were able to, play with other kids or outside of it, but that's always, I think, a lifesaver for a lot of us out here.
It is. It's part of the reason that I stayed in school, especially in high school. I mean, playing high school football is the only reason that I went. I don't know if I would have gone to continue to go to school if it wasn't because of sports.
And okay, so you got to play football in high school.
Yeah.
Did you have any good mentors along the way? Coaches, teachers? And I know you were going through a lot of rough times, and you know, I know friends that have grown up with no family support, or their fathers abandoned them, mothers abandoned them, or in jail. And so, uh, but someone always has at least one little light, of hope in their life. Did you get to have anybody like that?
Yeah, I had many actually. Even in elementary school, I remember teachers who used to take care of me and just hear me out, or I would cry on their lap or whatever. And even junior high, there was a couple of teachers who really took an interest and did their best to help me. In high school, I had a great coach that taught me a lot about working out. Some of the things he taught me uh, I still live by this day. He actually was my high school football coach was an Olympic Olympic coach for a weightlifting coach for I don't remember which country. He was American, but he worked. He was the coach of I forgot who. Point is, he was very knowledgeable and taught me a lot. That's actually when I took up on weightlifting even more. Again, I was desperate to put on some weight because when I started high school, I don't even think I was 100 pounds. And again, wanting to play football, I had to put on some weight.
And what did you want to play in football? What position?
Receiver and cornerback, those were my positions. I always loved those.
And I'm glad you went to play football. And just kind of knowing the era, um, gangs were very popularized, glamorized. And what made you not want to join a gang, or did you join a gang?
I actually did. I got jumped in when I was 12 years old. I grew up surrounded by gangs, drug addicts, drug dealers. I lived in an extremely violent neighborhood where people were getting shot. Um, so that was naturally the part of the progression, part of getting older. So I remember everyone when they went to junior high, you were pretty much picking your gang. Like it was there was a bunch of recruiters there already, and kids just chose their gang. I remember a bunch of 12 and 13-year olds. There was one. There was two brothers. I remember, for instance, one of them got killed in seventh grade. The other one went in for murder, and that's just the way it was. I mean, back then, at least in my neighborhood, it was just part of getting older. Around 12 and 13, you already have to know which gang you were going to go with. And Hollywood back in those days was so extremely dangerous because I always talk about her in other neighborhoods, let's say Compton, South Central, some of the places that people hear about more. The gangs would hold like many blocks, let's say like a few mile radius, let's say that they controlled. While in Hollywood, it was like every 2 blocks, it was a different gang, and all these gangs went to the same school, so it was just a recipe for violence.
Yes, I remember that, and I know people don't think of Hollywood as a maybe gang because of just what's on movies, but I remember Hollywood. It just so many gang members. It was pretty insane back then, and that's even more pressure. Growing up as a youth, you have the influence of friends, and you have the influence of gang members, and then you know, have the influence of your teammates for school. And so, what was like the changing point? Because I know the pressure to do more work for gangs. Like, what made you decide, you know, to start changing your life, or was that later on?
Well, actually, you know what? I noticed quickly because, again, I started gangbanging when I was 12, and then I ran away from home and I lived in the hood. And I had some homies, that were really good to me and took care of me, and they helped me out however they can. But I also noticed that there was a lot of bullshit, man, where the majority of them were not your homies, supposedly, or friends, however you want to call them. They were just a bunch of dirtbags, snakes, looking out for themselves. There was incidents that just completely changed my perspective on gang life. For instance, I remember I used to live off of plain white rice that I used to get at a Thai restaurant called Vim's in Hollywood. It cost me $1. One day I had no money, so I asked one of my homies, supposedly, I asked him for $1, and I clearly remember him saying, "I'm not your dad," or something to that effect. But point is that that was a turning point. I started to pay attention to the fact that these were not my homies. Uh, when I was 12, for instance, I also carried a gun, and the older homies used to give it to me, But then it started to make sense to me why they were giving it to me. It was so that if the cops came, I would get arrested and not them. So I started noticing little things like that very, very soon, and started seeing the reality that gangs weren't there to help you. These were just a bunch of snakes, dirtbags that did not give a shit about me. With the exception of a few, most of them could care less about me if I died or whatever. So I started like pretty much making my exit maybe around 14, 15. Like never really got jumped out or anything, but I stopped hanging out with them, even though I still lived in the hood.
It's very interesting how even at such a young age you can realize what's going on, and if people really care about you, or they're just have other intentions. And I'm glad you realize that. And uh, how long did this go on? Were you all through high school involved, or what finally kind of helped you separate from that lifestyle?
Well, at in high school, I wasn't. I wouldn't say that I was part of the gang anymore. Like I said, I never got jumped out. But if you ask me, I was not gang banging anymore. Even though I still had a lot of the same, mentality. I still looked like a gangster, fought a lot, and still had that mentality. But I was not part of the gang anymore. I knew better than to do that, especially because my focus again was in school and playing sports. And actually, that reminds me of something. I was listening to a podcast, and I often hear people talk about why they start working out, or why they started boxing or MMA or whatever. And it's often because you get bullied and stuff like that. And it was during that, listening to that podcast, that I realized that was part of the reason I started to. Because again, I was so small, and in the world I lived in, that made me a target. There was this one guy, supposedly my homie, who he was older. He was a grown ass man. And he used to pick me up, and hang me from the fire escape, And he had no problem killing anyone. And he used to just torture me like that. This was supposed to be my homie. And I remember like thinking about that and how I wanted to get bigger so that I could defend myself. And that's part of the reason too, that I recently realized that's part of the reason that I started working out also.
Yeah, I hear that recurring theme over a lot of people get bullied, and it's you just get tired of it and fed up, and you just want it to stop. So you do whatever you have access to at the time that makes you feel that you can get some control to stop the bullying. And working out, especially getting size. I know I was never a big, like, muscular guy, so I understand about that as well. And me, I was kind of crazy, living kind of like that LA lifestyle up until maybe my middle of my 20s, but I would say kind of calmed down a lot more in my 30s. So, through high school, and all that, when did you really start to kind of change your life, and why? What was like the final straw?
I think I had different turning points in my life. I think the most impactful was when I was about 15. I was still living in the street, and the woman who gave birth to me actually showed up one day, like while I was at the hood, and she just showed up out of the blue. And she gave me all this BS about how she was here to help me and all kinds of stuff. And then she would, and then, it was tough for me to accept because, like change is difficult, and even accepting help is difficult when you get used to this victim mentality, and or learns helplessness. And I was in that state. So when she got there, and offered help, it was tough to hear, but eventually I warmed up to it. Problem is, she never helped me. She would just lie to me and then disappear on me. The final time, again, it was about when I was 15. She told me she had gotten an apartment and we were going to live together. So I was so excited about that. I was like, finally, I'm going to have a place to live in. And one day, after school, I passed by her house. I show up, and the man that was living there, some guy she was living with, told me that she left, that she had moved to Miami. And I started crying. And this wasn't the first time that she had done something like that to me, but something was different this time. It's like like a drill sergeant popped in my head and stopped and said, "Stop crying." And I had a serious talk with myself. I came to terms with the reality that nobody loved me. Nobody gave a shit about me. Nobody was going to help me. But this time it was different. I was going to love myself. I was going to do everything I could to get ahead. And my mentality changed. I went from being a victim to realizing what a badass motherfucker I was, how much I had to survive through, how much I've overcame. And it was like a flip of the switch, and from then on, my whole perspective changed. Where I did not see obstacles, everything had a solution, and I was gonna find it. That I think what was the biggest uh, turning point in my life. There was still a lot of work that had to be done. I didn't completely switch, or I was still doing a lot of bad things for many, many years to come. But from that point on, I feel like I was constantly getting better.
And I'm glad for the drill sergeant popping in. For a long time, we could have that victim mentality, and just reframing your thoughts and the way you see things is so helpful. I try and do that to anybody that I coach. It's just the way you think, and I've given an example of just being tired in a marathon, and there's like 10 more miles to go, and you could be like, wow, 10 miles, or you could be like, oh, only 10 more miles to go. Just the way you say it, the way you kind of take it, and I know you really got into working out, and you've completed how many marathons?
You know what? I don't even know. I think it's 5 or 6.
5 or 6. And most listeners may not know this yet, but you have asthma,
I
and
do have asthma.
do you have some sort of heart issue as well,
I
or
have a hard murmur. I've had hyperthyroidism. I've had a bad knee. I've had many, many obstacles, many things, that ailments. And I think a lot of it might even come from being malnourished while I was on the street. But again, like that's one thing that I always tell people, because I'm sure you've experienced this before when you try to get people to work out or give them advice on health and fitness, and they always come up with some bullshit excuse like, "Oh, I have a bad knee, I have asthma, I have whatever." Fill in the blank. They have something, and I'm like, "Who gives a shit? There's a solution for it." And I always tell them, not only should you be working out, exercise is usually the cure for almost everything. Exercise and nutrition is the cure to almost everything. For instance, I've been off of my thyroid medication for over 3 years, and I credit the way I eat to being able to do that. And hyperthyroidism is a serious disease. There would be times when I'd lose 30 pounds in a month and be bedridden for a month. I couldn't move, no energy, just like like I was dying away, just shrinking. Just it really, really sucks. Or even asthma. During my marathons, I get asthma attacks. I don't let them stop me. I run right through them. I just slow down, if anything. But the point is that, yeah, like we all have some sort of issue, and that's no reason to keep you from working out. As a matter of fact, it should be a motivating factor.
and what about like when you first were? Well, I don't know how long you've had asthma. Some people are born with it, or the heart murmur. But a lot of times when we get that type of news, especially from a doctor, we kind of go to that victim mentality, and it's like, oh well, I can't do this anymore, or I can't. Um, was there something that were you liked on the beginning, and something changed, or that was just your mentality from the get go?
No, I think it was just the way that my mentality changed again when I had that epiphany at 15. But before that, yeah, I would use it as a crutch. I would use everything as a crutch, like uh, like everyone else did.
And the more I get to know you, Alex, when I met you, I knew you just as a runner, a guy who worked out. But one of the things that I see you do that to me is very inspirational, and it gives me hope because I know there's good people out there. Is I always see you giving to the homeless, and what is your motivation factor for that?
I think it's just knowing what that feels like. So a lot of the things that I do just come from experiences that I've had. For instance, one of the things I started with was the Halloween costume giveaway. Where I go to the schools and provide costumes for the kids who can't afford one. And I remember, going to my daughter's costume parades that they have at pretty much every elementary, and it would just put me back in to my childhood. And I remember for many years I had to go through that parade pretending that I didn't care until one day I couldn't take it anymore. I just started crying. I was like, I want a costume. And they took me to the principal's office, see what they could work out for me. And I called my uncle. My uncle was one of the few people in my life that was always there for me. I knew that he would try to help me. And my uncle actually went running, I don't know where, to get a costume. And point is that the parade ended. My uncle showed up. The parade had ended already. It was too late, but he brought me one, and that was so special to me. He went out of his way, and even though he was late, he did what he could to help me. And, that's how a lot of the things that I do, a lot of the charity things that I do started. Let's say the Christmas gifts. I never received a Christmas gift. So now I give Christmas gifts to kids who need one for Christmas. And I don't like to do it like most charities do, where, you just go get in the line, because that's kind of sad. And I know they mean well, but it can be even a bit humiliating, or not. I don't know if humiliating is the right word, but it's just not a good experience. So what I do is I actually have them write out a wish list. And, just like any other kid would, I want it to be as normal as possible. And they get something from their wish list. And again, it's just because I never had that experience.
And as I mentioned, I think that's great, Alex. And a lot of people think there's not good people in the world, but I saw myself you doing this during the pandemic. And a lot of people may not know this, but I put your website up on the fortune cooking. It's www.ineedtickets.com. And so your business is a agent, or a seller, um, when there was no sports going on, when there was no concerts to sell. Um, I don't know how you made income, and a lot of people could stop thinking of others and just think about themselves. But you kept doing the homeless thing during the pandemic. So I wanted to just say that's a it takes a big person to do that, and if no one's told you, great job on that. I'm sure you've inspired other people.
Yeah, well, I realized people were struggling. I didn't make any money during that time, but I knew people were struggling, were in a worse situation than I was. So I found some connections and actually got donations from a bunch of stores, and we would provide groceries to families and even deliver it to them during the pandemic. Some people were really struggling. People would find me and tell me their stories, and they had nothing to eat. So we would get them groceries.
And that's great. And I can I can also put your Instagram if you like, so that they can reach out to you if anybody wants to help out.
Yeah,
Or
that'd be great. I'm always looking for help when it comes to charity.
and let's touch a little bit more on fitness. Since the title is Misconceptions in Fitness, what do you feel is the biggest misconception in fitness today?
There's quite a few. I think the biggest one, or at least the one that I have the biggest problem with, is the fact that a lot of trainers out there, or even just the fitness industry in general, has perpetuated this notion that in order to get shape, you have to suffer, you have to go hard. You have things like challenges like 75 hard. I don't know if you've heard of it, or everything is just like you got to go hard. So people have this misconception that in order to get in shape, you have to deprive yourself of the foods you love. You have to suffer and go through all this pain. And I'm constantly trying to tell people that you don't have to do that. I enjoy my workouts. I enjoy going to run, with the exception of a few workouts that I do once in a while, maybe during training for a marathon and stuff like that. You do a few where you really go balls out, and they're excruciating. The majority of my workouts are very, very easy. And it's not only is it enough, it's actually the right way of working out. And so many people are struggling with their weight or just getting in shape because they've tried working out the way that they believe they're supposed to. Where they go to this, let's say, for instance, these boot camps, where you have these trainers who are just egotistical. They're really just trying to show off, it looks like to me. They have people doing these crazy workouts. So you're taking this person who's been sitting on their couch for their whole life, doesn't move. Now you're bringing in this person and you're working them till they throw up. Do you think the trainer does that kind of workout where they're throwing up? I bet you they were not. It's almost like they're just trying to humiliate people rather than help them. And then they're not even correcting their form or teaching them anything about, how the body works, just exercise physiology or basic biochemistry, which I think anyone who's in the fitness industry should have. So at least the basic knowledge, understanding how food works in your body. And so you can explain to people, look, this is what happens when you eat this. This is what happens when you eat that. When you work out this way, you're burning glucose. When you work out in this way, you are burning fat. Or if they're not burning fat, you should be able to explain to them why they're not able to burn body fat. So I just feel like the biggest one, again, is just the fact that people think they have to suffer to get in shape. And that is completely wrong.
I 100% agree with you on that. You brought up a lot of good points. I feel that a lot of people feel that when they work out, they need to push through pain, or if something hurts, that they just need to like tough it out. And I completely disagree with that. There's ways to get that body part going active again without destroying your body, because it's not going to help you by getting a bad experience and not wanting to go back and work out. Um, I've worked at so many different gyms where I've seen those trainers who push them too hard, and that client's not going to come back. I
They
mean,
don't. That's
who,
why they have a very low retention rate. And I've actually been looking at the exercises that you've been posting, and I've been doing them because it makes perfect sense to me. I've been listening to the coach that you're working with and you recommended, and everything he says makes so much sense. For instance, working in those ranges at very low intensity and low weight, where you're focusing on those muscles that are hard to reach, and the and you're able to maintain correct form during the exercise, which is very important.
yeah, I've learned so much from that, and he's one of my influences who kind of gets me to think. He's the one who always stresses you don't have to work through pain. You don't have to work through, in fact, if you feel pain, stop and do this other
Avoid it,
exercise
exactly.
till you can get that part strong enough and then continue. But especially, I keep saying this about the younger guys, like especially 18 to maybe their 30s, full of testosterone. They just want to lift weights, and oh, my shoulder hurts. It's okay. I can push through it today. Oh, my biceps is hurting, and then you get a torn bicep or something else, and then you stop working out because majority of the population in the US doesn't work out. So it's not like I'm just talking fairy tales. It's just is what it is, and people get married. And that's another thing that kind of stops people from working out, which could be a whole different topic.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It reminds me of another point I'd like to make, that it doesn't even require that much time. You don't. People are always pushing to be. You want to lift super heavy. I want to do this many repetitions, doing everything incorrectly, and it goes hand in hand with the whole philosophy of not going hard all the time. You can do 15 minutes a day, 4 times a week, easy workout, and get so much out of it. There was one study, for instance, where they had people do one set. They had the other group of people do 5 sets of the same exercise. I think the length of the study was, if I'm not mistaken, it was 3 months. The group that did 5 repetitions of the exercise got 13% better. The group that did 1 repetition of the exercise got 10% better. The point is that there was not a big difference. The group that was doing only 1 set still got a lot out of their workout. And I'd like to let people know about that study because it's a game changer where you can work out, maybe do one set of push-ups and one set of pull-ups every 2 days, and you can get so much out of it. You can completely change your life. And then what happens is that once you create that habit, which is going to be a lot easier to create if you're taking it easy, you'll then maybe add a little bit more. Maybe you'll go out for to the gym and do maybe a 30-minute workout instead of 15 minutes. Same thing with running. You can start walking, go out for a walk. Eventually, it'll get so easy that you can do a very light jog. Before you know it, you'll be running a marathon. I mean, I think that's how a lot of us ended up running a marathon. You start and do this 1 mile, and before you know it, you're out there running a marathon. It's just gradually progressing. And a lot of times, I think people see fitness as I got to do that exercise that that very fit person is doing, and I always explain to them that you don't. You got to do your workout. What's something that's at your level? Don't worry about doing what that other fit person is doing. You'll get there eventually.
Yes, what do they say? Comparison is like the beginning of like misery, and everyone has their own story, so you can't compare like, oh, this runner. Well, maybe that runner's been running for 10 years or 20 years, or did track in high school, and for you to want to compare yourself the first time and feel bad about it is it's not something good. But I think a lot of people when they first start any sort of sport, that's sort of like it's always about comparing, and that's the wrong attitude to start some sort of new activity. You just want to go and enjoy it and have a good time. um, I saw I think a post you did earlier, and I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit. I think you put something about that you feel that most of the stuff you see on TV doesn't work, and I wasn't quite sure what you're referring to, but I have a little difference of opinion, but maybe it's the same. You let me know. I think that all those things that we see on TV, those infomercials, because they all pretty much say, "Give us 90 days and you're gonna lose so much weight." Except for the diet pills. I'm talking like exercise machines. Um, any sort of workout for 90 days, you're gonna get results. So I kind of think
Exactly.
they all work, but at the same time, it's not going to be one thing that helps you fix everything.
Exactly. Yes, completely agree. Yeah, what I'm referring to is, this whole notion, and it's, about the fitness industry. Is my post? I think I was noting that it's worth $78 billion, and it's designed to take your money, not necessarily give you results.
Yes.
What I mean by that is that they're selling all these products to people that just don't work, and even the ones that do work are not really for beginners. They're for high level athletes, who can't get all the nutrition they need off of the just food alone because they're burning through so many calories. But you have all these companies that are just selling people these magic pills that are going to make them lose weight and all that. And just like you mentioned, and people get fooled into thinking that the product is working because they go from, let's say, never doing any exercise to doing some exercise incorrectly or whatever. But because they're doing something, they're going to see some results, and they credit the product to that, to doing that. And when in fact it was just them simply moving. And yeah, machines. There's a lot of machines out there that are effective, but they're not all. There's one that comes to mind, a very popular bike. I'd rather not say the name, but it's just not built correctly. It's not like a road bike. It puts you in a bad position. I think it costs like $6,000,
Wow.
and it's just it's what's it called? A spinning bike that eventually is going to cause a knee injury.
Mm,
And I've tried to talk people out of buying that before because I'm like, you can get an actual road bike. The roads are free. You can go ride that real road bike at the park, and you're going to enjoy it so much more. Or you can put that real road bike on a trainer, and that's what the spin bike that costs $6,000 is simulating anyway. So why not just get the real thing? So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to products. Of course, there's some great ones out there. And then I'm also talking about I was referring about, let's say, stuff like some boot camps. Not all of them. Some of them are great and have great trainers, but the majority of the ones that I see are geared towards people who are just getting started. And you have one trainer pushing like 20 people through this excruciating workout. If you look at everyone, everyone's doing everything incorrectly. They are just in survival mode, suffering through this excruciating workout. And again, just like you mentioned, they will get some results. So the people think, oh, this must be good. I lost some weight. But what they don't realize that a lot of the times what they're doing is they're just damaging their bodies because they're not getting the right nutrition. They're not repairing their muscles after the workout. And a lot of the weight that they lose is water or muscle. They're not burning fat. Another thing I stress to people all the time is that just because you're working out does not mean that you're burning body fat. We have different sources of energy. And depending on the kind of shape you're in and even the exercise that you're doing, you're oftentimes not burning body fat. You might be burning glucose, you might be burning muscle. So I guess that's what I was referring to in that post. But again, just want to make sure that also the audience and you understand that yes, there are some good products out there. There are some great boot camps. There are some great trainers out there.
Well,
But the majority of the stuff is not very good or geared
yeah,
to help you.
especially I feel those diet pills and pills you see on there. That's just a bunch of junk. I think I've brought this up before. Most of those things, if you go and you go to the UFC website, they have almost every product they're banned because the substance that they say or claim is in that bottle is not
What it is.
100%. Yeah, and they usually have some sort of steroid in there. So, I try and stay away from that. There are ways and there are certain companies that do certain testing so you can be sure that the product you're getting is pure. But
It is what it's supposed to be, correct?
yeah, but that's for the average person who's starting off. That's not something you learn in the beginning. It's just something you kind of learn on your journey of fitness.
Yes. Take
And
a
so,
pre workout, for instance. I always tell people about, a pre workout. Yes, that's going to give you energy. You're taking in sugar. It's going to provide some energy. But what that sugar does, it prevents you from burning body fat. Now you are dependent on that. Also, if you are providing an external source of energy, then why does your body have any reason to burn body fat? The body fat that we store, it's supposed to be readily available energy that you should be able to use when you go on a run or lift weights. And if you're taking this pre workout, then your body's going to burn out what you just consumed. It's not going to burn the fat that you're trying to lose.
yeah, I stay away from pre workouts. When I first started, of course, I experiment with them, but in the long run, I'm like, do I really want something to take something every time I need to work out? That can't be good. And then I'll be all hyped up and then I can't go to sleep. So to me, those products did more damage than good. And good thing it was easy for me to weed myself off those.
Yeah, they are a problem. The point is to create certain adaptations in your body that are going to make your body more efficient. For instance, for a long time, like many people, I thought you had to eat every 3 hours. So I used to get hangry. We're a lot of pretty much the entire country is familiar with this. You get hungry in a way that's not natural, and you're desperate, and you need to eat. And it's because we've accustomed our bodies to constantly needing an external source of energy. And we're storing all this body fat that we can't use, mainly because our body doesn't even recognize it as food. The majority of the country just consumes all this processed garbage that damages your mitochondria, which is the only way that you can burn body fat. So I started changing the way that I eat, and now I am amazed because I could not go 3 hours without eating. I was desperate for food. Now I can easily go 24 hours without eating. I could probably do a lot longer than that because my body now has access to the body fat that's stored for a reason, and that is to burn it whenever we don't have food. And so now when I get hungry, the amazing thing is that I'm not desperate. It's just very, very temporary. While my body takes some of its body fat and goes through the process of gluconeogenesis and converts it to the glucose that my brain needs and the rest of my body just to maintain the normal glucose levels. And the hunger goes away. I'm not desperate. I have a never ending supplies virtually of energy. And anyone could do that just following some simple steps.
And Alex, how long did it take your body to get like accustomed to you know, eating less and less?
I think maybe about 4 months, I'm going to say, but that doesn't mean you have to wait for a month. I saw a difference after a few weeks. And it's different depending on where you're starting from. I at least already pretty much ate a healthy diet. I just ate too much. So it was a little easier for me. For some people, it might be shorter. For some, it might be longer.
Okay.
But we
I
can all do that.
got it. And I know you're in Los Angeles for the people listening in. Do you plan to do LA Marathon, or do you plan to do any sort of event coming up?
I do plan on doing the LA Marathon. I love that one, and it's the only one I've ever done actually. And I plan on doing it almost every year. The only times I've missed it is again because of my asthma, and it only because it was so extremely bad that I knew I might die if I did it. But otherwise, I'll run through asthma attacks, no problem.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing you there this year. And
Oh yes.
also, I mentioned earlier you own a ticket agency, and you're a busy man, family man, running your own business. That you know, just for everyone listening in or who joined in, there was no concerts, there was no sports during the pandemic, and so I, just like for a lot of Americans, life was not easy for you. So please go ahead, promote anything you want, your website, the charities that you do for the homeless. Let anybody know how they can reach out to you.
You can find me on Instagram as Alex F underscore runs LA. And the name of the website is ineedtickets.com. We sell tickets to sports, concerts, and theater nationwide. Even if it's sold out, we can help you. And one last point I'd like to make, since you brought that up, is that even just we touched on that earlier. It's all about perspective. During the pandemic, I did not make a penny. There was no shows going on, but I remained positive because that's just the way that I think. I was like, there's always a silver lining, and I thought about all the things that I could do, or that I still had a roof over my head, and just whether it's fitness, life, or whatever, you have to focus on that. You cannot let negative thoughts simmer in your head. So I remain positive throughout the whole thing, and it's just the way that I feel everyone should think, no matter what position you're in. And about the charity, that I never stop. I mean, even if I'm not posting, I'm always helping someone. I keep in touch with families, and I watch them throughout. For instance, I just texted a family yesterday that I've been helping for years. When I met them, the kids, they were not doing well. I mean, one of them had just gotten arrested for having a knife at school. He was 15. Well, point is that these kids are doing amazingly now. Two of them are already in college. That one with the knife is in college. He's been doing well. The change in them has just been amazing. And I like to think that I played a small role in that. And if anyone ever wants to help, just let me know. I always have people that need help. I keep in touch with a lot of these families, and so once in a while I post, especially when I need some help. But I'm always doing something, so feel free to offer.
Yes, be sure to reach out to Alex if you want to help out. Also, if you need tickets, I have personally used them for tickets. And once again, the information is on the fortune cookie. I put the website as well as his Instagram. So if you have access to Fireside, you can go ahead and look at that. If not, on the replay, you could just hear the name of it. Alex, thank you so much for being my guest. It's kind of tough to get everything in an hour, but there's so much more to talk about, and so many more different topics we can go off kind of based on what we talked about. So I definitely want to have you back on in the future.
Would love to.
And we could talk a little bit more about fitness and different topics as well. And maybe we can do it after LA Marathon. See how your training and everything went.
Yes, definitely. I'm definitely interested. Just say when and we'll do it. And
All
thank
right.
you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be my guest. I hope everyone enjoyed episode 10. I can't believe it, of Athletic Definition. Thank you for joining. This is Coach Ray Z with my guest, Alex Flamenco.
Thank you.